The Strokes.
Yep.
Dave, not much of a Strokes fan, right?
That's correct. Yes, I've listened to
Not a big
all of
Strokes
the.
fan,
I've listened to all
and
the Strokes
I made you
albums, and
listen to this one.
yeah, man, it's wild, dude.
Oh.
Listen to all the Strokes. Listen to all the Voids, which is rough. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I'm very interested in the Strokes. I think they're a very interesting story, and obviously a very important act for obvious reasons. But yeah, I'm just more like I guess interested in their impact and influence and how they affected New York at the time more than the music itself, which is not really my jam.
Yeah, the Strokes. It's interesting, right? They were the main focus of the book Meet Me in the Bathroom, um the oral history of
Yep.
rock music in the scene in the early 2000s in New York City, and for good reason. I mean, the Strokes, when they first came up, were an incredibly exciting band and kind of tapped as like the next people to carry the torch in New York City for rock music. Is This It? Their 2001 album, some of the biggest indie rock songs of the decade with Reptilia, Someday, Last Night, Hard to Explain, just hit after hit. Room on Fire and First Impressions on Earth, both pretty solid. And then there was a 5-year hiatus. The band kind of went their own ways. You know, Albert Hammond Jr., who I think we've talked about one of his solo works on the pod. I think
2 years ago, I think the last one.
I think so. Went to do some solo stuff. Julian Casablanca is the lead singer, kind of in now, and they've all had their own various issues and relationships and things that kind of pulled them away from music. But then they came back with Angles and Come Down Machine, and both pretty underwhelming albums in the early 2010s. And then there was another hiatus, 8 years, played a couple of festivals. I remember seeing them in 2014, 2015 at Governor's Ball. And They killed it. They were fantastic, but it was the first time they had really performed, especially in New York City, in quite a while. So it was a sign that they were starting to maybe consider doing some stuff again. A couple of songs here and there were released, but finally, The New Abnormal, their new album, is dropped. Very apt title to drop during a quarantine, which I thought was pretty good. Some of the song titles I thought were also pretty poignant. Why Are Sundays So Depressing? I was like, yeah, I feel that. I really feel that.
Shout out the New York Mets as well. Ode to the Mets. That's a hilarious one.
But overall, I found this to be a very strange move for them, and I'm wondering, you not being the biggest Strokes fan, how are you feeling after this listing?
Yeah, man. I think I like this more than Pearl Jam. Don't know if that's a compliment, but it's weird because my thing with the Strokes, and I like their albums less and less as I listen. I think that's kind of a consensus opinion, I guess. But, I never really liked Casablancas' vocals. Yeah, it was kind of just grating and weird to me. But the drums are pretty good on this album, and they've always, it's good guitars. They're in that lane. But I don't know. I found this kind of easy to listen to, even if I wasn't really tuning in super hard. I don't know, man. It's weird. I think because I found Gigaton so in my face, messy, and Eddie's just kind of warbling around. That was really easy for me to check out on. But this, I was all right, I get it, I guess. But I also I'm not someone who's been used to being disappointed by the Strokes for 15 years, the way, or 20 years, the way, people that were there at the time back in '01 are like. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm in more of a position to be okay with their music. I don't know. They're such a fascinating band.
Yeah. Do you know who produced this album?
Well, I see Rick Rubin, quote unquote.
Yeah. But what?
Was there any Rick Rubin influence? He probably gave him a few fucking suggestions, and that was it.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
I was really surprised to see that, and it's actually interesting. So, where as I was kind of listening to this, I've listened to it twice through. It's not too long. It's like I
No.
think 50, yeah, maybe like 45, 50 minutes.
Yep.
Nine songs. So these songs are fairly long, which is different for the Strokes, right? The Strokes, you think about Reptilia, it's pretty tight, like 3 3 20 minute song, and that was kind of the Strokes thing, was that they practiced so much. They were like one of the tightest bands coming up,
Right.
and when they
And that's
went
why
on
they were so
stage,
good live too.
right, yeah, that's the thing, is that they went up and they played the songs exactly the way that you knew them. And Casablanca sounded almost exactly the same. This almost feels like uh, the Strokes moving into like that next stage of life, what it means to be older, reflecting on things. And it feels almost like they're saying we as a band need to change because Engels and the come down machine, we're not that band anymore. We're different people now. Obviously, Casablanca has been a lot more interested in the voids recently,
Mm-hmm.
and
He's
you know,
very open
also,
about that too.
yeah, and also I think working with um, like more EDM. He was featured on Daft Punk's most recent album,
Right.
and what I think that was one of the singles that they dropped too. And you can kind of hear that, like the first track on this album, the adults are talking, starts off with just like a drum machine, like it's just like a very
Right.
like EDM sounding beat to start it off. I think that kind of sets it off as them pulling from what they were interested in back in the day, what their influences were. There's very clear 80s influence. I mean, Billy Idol and the Psychedelic Furs are uh, listed as contributors to two of the songs in the middle of this album,
Right.
and
It's like the
it
same
really sounds,
melodies.
yeah, it really sounds like they were just going for that like soft rock um 80s sound that they all probably grew
Mm-hmm.
up listening to and vibing on. That's kind of what this album ended up being. Now, does that make the music good? I think they're solid songs. I don't they're not the Strokes that people grew up loving, and people are either gonna have to accept that or accept that they're probably not Strokes fans in the form that they are now. So
Right.
I don't know. Overall, I found a lot of it really enjoyable, though. Obviously, Bad Decisions we already had on our 2020 best
Mm-hmm.
of playlist. Sounds very much like a. I wrote down modern English.
Yeah. Very familiar sound,
Yeah,
but
but
good. It's good.
yep. And then I really liked Why Are Some Days So Depressing. I know I already mentioned it. I just felt like
Yeah.
that was a really solid listen, clear standout in the back half. Especially, I didn't really love Eternal Summer at the Door. Something about the songs didn't mesh with me, but
Oh,
then
At the Door. That's the shit I hate the most. When it's like a little softer. Oh man,
yeah.
that is not for me.
Um, and then uh, I guess one other song I wanted to shout out, which is the second to last song, Not the Same Anymore. As I was listening to that, I thought, did Alex Turner write this song for Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino? Because it sounds like a lounge singer singing this shit, and like exactly structured the same. And
It's a nice comparison.
I wonder if they've been collaborating at all or influencing. I don't know. Very very interesting album from the Strokes. I hope if you're watching on YouTube, people, I'd like to hear what their thoughts are on this, because I've seen a huge mix in terms of
Sure.
review.
Yeah. And that's what I find so interesting about the Strokes too, because they're a band that, like, they're like one of those like first like modern groups to get like completely like torn to shreds by critics and fan reception, which is even more impressive because it was pre-social media. You know, like that second album was too much like Is This It, their beloved debut. And then after that, it's like, oh, well, now you strayed too far away. It's like they really got like put through the ringer in a certain respect. Meanwhile, like after This Is It, or is This It? They start getting their clock cleaned by the Killers and Kings of Leon anyway. They never were the biggest band. Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. They never were the biggest band, even though everyone said they should be the biggest band. And they also didn't really handle fame well. So they're a very interesting story. I've only read excerpts from Meet Me in the Bathroom, but it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, you know, I think it's also like, what did they want to be? They were like the first of those bands to really be like touring and starting to work their way through Europe and shit like that.
Right.
But they were always about being rock stars.
Yes.
Brandon Flowers
Hell no.
and the Kings of Leon guys a little bit more. Like they famously had a lot of substance abuse issues, partying issues, multiple canceled tours.
Mm-hmm.
But the Killers were just like, we are making hit songs, and that's what we're gonna do.
Right.
After Hot Fuss, they were like, okay, need to turn out another hit. Like,
Right.
and it's just totally different ways of going about your
Right.
business.
I mean, you think of the Strokes. I think you tell this to people now, they shake their heads. But the Strokes were like, "Nah, we don't want that Heineken money, bro. We ain't doing your ad. Sorry, that's unheard of now. Like selling out isn't looked down upon like that, you know. But that
No.
was the rock star attitude, and that's why I think everyone held them up as the saviors of rock at the turn of the century because they still had that, you know. And by all accounts, they still bring it when they perform. But yeah, it's they're very unique.
I'm interested to see how these songs are going to translate live because their shows are very much still like tight and almost samey in a sense. I think I've seen them twice now, and they bring a really fierce energy when they play. They, especially if you see them in New York City, you just feel. And these songs aren't going to fit with that. So I'm interested to see how they kind of fit these in. Definitely want to catch them live whenever we can go see live shows again, which might not be till end of 2021. I'm seeing. So
Yep.
I'll check in then.
TBD.